In the 16th century, there was a mountain so rich in silver that the Spanish believed they could build a bridge of pure bullion from the Andes all the way to Madrid. But history hides a darker truth. For every brick of silver that left Potosí, a human life was paid in exchange. This isn't just the story of the world's first global currency, it's the audit of the mountain that eats men. In 1545, high in the freezing winds of the Andes, an Inca shepherd named Diego Walpa was tending his llamas on a desolate, towering peak. Stopping to rest against the stone, a sudden, blinding flash of silver caught his eye. He reached down and pried a piece from the rock. It was astonishingly heavy, almost pure silver. He had just stumbled upon the richest mineral deposit in human history. Realizing the monumental weight of what he had found, Walpa brought the secret to a Spanish prospector named Juan de Villarroel. Within weeks, the secret broke, and the greatest rush in the history of the Spanish Empire erupted. Villarroel promptly planted his flag, claimed the entire mountain for the crown, and overnight, a barren, freezing wilderness gave birth to the legendary imperial city of Potosí. Within decades, this desolate mining camp transformed into the largest and wealthiest city in the Americas, boasting a population of 200,000 people, eclipsing the size of London, Madrid, or Paris. It was a surreal metropolis built 4,000 meters above sea level, featuring 36 lavish churches, 14 bustling public squares, and a staggering display of luxury where merchants traded in silk, velvet, and diamonds, oblivious to the human engine driving it all. The mountain was known as Cerro Rico, the Rich Hill. A towering, perfectly symmetrical cone of or rising high above the Andes, it became the ultimate monument to the plunder of the New World. And the name was no exaggeration. Its inner veins were so unimaginably packed with native silver that it stood as the single richest mineral deposit humanity has ever laid eyes upon. Between 1545 and 1600, Potosí produced over 40,000 tons of silver, accounting for more than half the global supply and dwarfing the output of the rest of the world combined. The Spanish crown skimmed a mandatory fifth of all production straight off the top, the dreaded quinto real. The staggering remainder flooded into the hands of private merchant dynasties, fueling global trade networks from Seville to the markets of Ming Dynasty China. But the glittering wealth of Potosí was not pulled from the earth by magic. It was carved out by human flesh and blood. Every ounce of silver shipped across the oceans carried an unimaginable human toll. The mountain that built empires, funded wars, and financed global trade was fueled by a ruthless, grinding engine of destruction, and the price of empire was paid entirely in lives. The Mita wasn't a Spanish invention. The Incas had long used this rotation of forced labor for communal state projects. But when the conquistadors seized control, they turned an ancient social contract into an industrialized machine of death, weaponizing native labor to empty the mountain. In 1573, Spanish Viceroy Francisco de Toledo codified the horror into law. Under a brutal, systematic decree, 1/7 of the adult male population across Peru and Bolivia was legally conscripted to work the mines on punishing annual rotations. Entire communities were shattered as men were torn from their homes, marched hundreds of miles across the high Andes, and fed directly into the belly of the mountain. At its brutal peak, up to 13,500 men were forced into the mines every single year. They were marched from distant villages up to 900 miles away across treacherous terrain. So harsh was the journey and so grueling the conditions that thousands died before even reaching the mountain. For those who arrived, it was a one-way ticket. Most never saw their families or their homes again. The work inside Cerro Rico was a living nightmare. Miners had to descend hundreds of feet down swinging, unstable rope ladders known as the ramo, where a single slip meant instant death on the rocks below. Inside the labyrinth of tunnels, the heat was suffocating and the air was thick with toxic lead and silica dust. It was so starved of oxygen that tallow candles could barely stay lit, casting a dim, flickering glow over men working to the brink of total collapse. But the most devastating innovation to hit Potosí wasn't mechanical, it was chemical. In 1557, the patio process revolutionized mining by using liquid mercury to chemically bind and extract silver from low-grade ore. It was brilliantly efficient, allowing the Spanish to squeeze profit from stone they previously abandoned. But it came with a catastrophic price. Mercury is a deadly neurotoxin, and it turned the entire extraction process into a slow-motion execution. The forced labor of the Mita and the toxic scourge of mercury combined to create an industrial death machine unlike any the world had ever seen. Modern historians estimate that up to 8 million indigenous people perished in the mines of Potosí over the centuries of Spanish rule, consumed by overwork, mercury poisoning, sudden cave-ins, and relentless disease. It was a staggering human toll that turned a mountain of silver into a mountain of bones. The mountain was wealth, an inexhaustible marvel that funded European empires, fueled the rise of modern capitalism, and shaped the global economy. But every bar of silver shipped across the ocean, every grand cathedral raised in Spain, and every glittering coin spent in the markets of the world was built directly on human bones. Potosí stands forever as history's most haunting paradox, a monument to human achievement built entirely through human destruction.
If you're finding the hidden cost of this empire shocking, hit the like button so more people can see this audit of history. It really helps the channel grow.
The silver from Potosí didn't just enrich Spain or sit in European vaults. It became the world's first truly global currency. Fleets of galleons carried the metal across the Atlantic to European markets, while the legendary Manila galleons transported vast fortunes directly across the Pacific Ocean to the markets of Manila and Ming Dynasty China, knitting the continents together in a web of global trade. Every year, Spanish galleons carried the silver of Potosí across the vast Pacific to the port of Manila, and from there straight into the heart of China. In the 1580s, the Ming Dynasty took a monumental step. They overhauled their tax system, making foreign silver coins the official legal tender. Instantly, Chinese demand for the metal skyrocketed, binding the mines of the Andes directly to the economic heartbeat of Asia. In Europe, the massive flood of New World silver triggered the first true global hyperinflation. Prices for basic goods skyrocketed across the continent in what economists call the price revolution of the 16th century. Spain became the economic engine, or rather, the mine of Europe, yet it fell victim to its own success, as uncontrolled inflation hollowed out its domestic industries and drained its treasury as fast as it filled. The silver pouring out of Potosí was the lifeblood of the Spanish Empire at its absolute zenith. It bankrolled the mighty Spanish Armada, financed the conquest of the Philippines, and paid for the construction of the monumental Escorial Palace outside Madrid. It single-handedly funded Spain's legendary Golden Age, a glorious explosion of art, architecture, and literature that masked the brutal human extraction happening thousands of miles away. But that astronomical wealth was never invested in building a sustainable future. Instead, it was burned away on endless European religious wars and lavish royal luxuries. When the silver finally ran dry, Spain was left bankrupt and broken. And Bolivia, the nation that literally birthed the modern global economy, was left stranded in staggering poverty, saddled with ecological ruin and an enduring legacy of extraction from which it has never truly recovered. The silver pouring from Potosí didn't just stay in bars. It was struck into the legendary Spanish piece of 8, the real 8-real coin. This rugged, universally recognized coin became the world's first true global currency. From the bustling merchant ports of Ming China to the streets of London and the colonial outpost of New Amsterdam, which would later become New York, the piece of 8 was accepted everywhere, anchoring international trade for centuries. The cost was entirely incalculable. The mountain was ruthlessly hollowed out, its people utterly destroyed, and the unimaginable wealth that could have built a nation instead vanished across the globe, leaving Bolivia in permanent poverty. Potosí remains the ultimate ghost of global capitalism, a monument where the riches belonged to the empire and the ruin belonged to the land. Today, Potosí is a haunting ghost of its former imperial self. Its population is a mere fraction of what it once was, and the legendary city that once rivaled London and Paris is now one of the poorest regions in Bolivia. The grand cathedrals still stand, but they look down on narrow, crumbling streets where miners still descend into the collapsing belly of Cerro Rico every single day, chasing the remnants of a silver dream that turned into a national nightmare. The mountain is still being mined today, though the Spanish conquistadors are long gone. Now, it is worked by independent cooperatives, generations of miners who descend into the dark labyrinths facing conditions almost as perilous and primitive as they were in the 16th century. They dig with hand tools and raw endurance, pulling out what little zinc, lead, and trace silver remains from a mountain that refuses to stop bleeding. The tragedy of Potosí is not history, it is happening right now. Children as young as 12 still work in the treacherous depths of the tunnels, carrying heavy sacks of or just as their ancestors did centuries ago. The relentless toll of lead poisoning, black lung, mercury exposure, and sudden cave-ins cuts lives brutally short. Today, the average life expectancy for a Potosí miner remains a shocking 40 to 50 years, a heartbreaking testament to a legacy of extraction that refuses to end. The mountain that once built empires and fueled the global economy is now a hollow shell. Over 20% of its total volume has been blasted, tunneled, and scraped away. The interior is a fragile, unstable labyrinth of ancient and modern shafts, honeycombed to the point of structural failure. Today, the peak of Cerro Rico faces the ultimate threat of catastrophic collapse, a physical monument teetering on the edge of ruin. Deep inside the suffocating darkness of Cerro Rico, the miners do not pray to God for protection, they worship LTO, the devil. Born from a terrifying fusion of indigenous Andean deities and Catholic teachings introduced by the Spanish, LTO is the undisputed lord of the underworld. The miners offer him cigarettes, coca leaves, and alcohol, desperately begging the master of the mountain to spare their lives in a domain where death is always a heartbeat away. The curse of Cerro Rico is that it gave the world boundless wealth while leaving its own people in poverty. It built grand empires, forged the first global currency, and condemned generations to oblivion.
We're almost at the final verdict. If you haven't subscribed to Time Recalls yet, join us. We dive deep into these hidden histories every week.
The final verdict on Potosí is history's most haunting paradox. It was the crucible that forged our modern global economy, yet it remains an enduring monument to human exploitation. The mountain gave the world its wealth, but kept the sorrow, proving that the true cost of global progress is sometimes paid entirely by those forced to dig in the dark. It gave the world the first truly global currency. It funded the dazzling cultural explosion of Europe's golden age. It financed the rise of the mighty Spanish Empire, and in doing so, it forged the financial and economic framework of the modern global economy as we know it today. But that unprecedented progress came at an astronomical human cost. It claimed up to 8 million lives, poisoned an entire continent's ecosystem, and left Bolivia trapped in generations of poverty. It completely hollowed out a sacred mountain, and the very people forced to empty it. So, was the birth of our modern global economy truly worth the sacrifice of 8 million lives? History records the glittering empires, the global trade networks, and the rise of modern capitalism, but it also leaves behind the haunting silence of a hollowed mountain, asking us to weigh the price of progress against the value of human life. History's verdict is ultimately clear. The staggering wealth of Potosí was never a gift. It was a monumental theft, a systemic plunder of land, labor, and human lives that built modern fortunes on a foundation of destruction. And across the centuries, that profound debt has never been repaid. The silver from this mountain didn't just build the Spanish Empire, it laid the tracks for the modern world we live in today. But those tracks were greased with the lives of 8 million people. The guilt meter stands at 92%. Is the price of our modern world a cost we should have been willing to pay? Leave your verdict, guilty or visionary, in the comments below.
If you think the exploitation ended with the Spanish crown, you haven't seen the receipts for our next audit. We're moving from a mountain of silver to the corporate titan that once commanded half of the world's trade, backed by its own private army and sovereign powers. Next week, we open the ledgers of the British East India Company. You won't want to miss what we find inside.